Don in London, hello. My videos are all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance was alcohol. It would be again if I were to go back to it. And my behaviour could be equally addictive around people, places and things. So these days I don't drink one day at a time, and I am very lucky that I don't obsess about people, places and things too. So it's not about being in the right place at the right time with the right people because I want to. It's more about being in the right place with the right people, with the right things, because I need to. I've learned the difference between needs, covering the basics, and wants, which will always make me feel inadequate because I'm striving for something I don't have. So the most important thing I have these days is peace of mind. And I've been doing these videos for quite some time. I concentrate on what works for me. And what works for me in recovery is Alcoholics Anonymous as a place where I learn, experience, strength and hope, how to be sober. I never speak for AA, nor shall I ever in the future. AA is full of unique, authentic people who speak for themselves where they will. And this video is all about one of the 12 steps, step 8, which is about making a list of people we have harmed and being willing to make amends to them. But before I get there, I'll just share the AA preamble, which is shared at every meeting, and then talk about some of the steps towards step 8. So here is the AA preamble, shared at every meeting of AA I go to, a place where I learn, experience, strength and hope from people who are actually living the principles of 12 steps. And it gets easier as life goes on. It doesn't mean life gets easier. It means that life is more understandable. We know how we feel about life and what we can do and what we cannot do. So we find a place of sanctuary in our own minds and with other people who are like-minded. What a relief. And I'm just fresh back from a meeting, but maybe I'll talk about that a bit another time. So the AA preamble, which we share at every meeting, goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it, a desire to stop drinking. There are no rules, laws or regulations to confound you or to fight against. You're there because you want to be, or you're not there because you don't want to be. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So that's part of the reason why I do these videos, to share experience, strength and hope. And our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And not everybody can read, write and function when they get to AA. Some people have never learned to read or write. Some people just cannot take anything in when they first get to the fellowship because their heads are full of anxious thoughts and fears about what's going to happen if I stop drinking. And I don't know how to stop drinking, and my life is turned inside out because of it. So hopefully, as I go through these steps, and there's plenty of my videos out there, it gives one person's outlook. But I've always learned it's the many people in AA who keep me sober. It's the many people with many experiences which make the difference. Because when I go to a meeting, I hear other people telling their truth and learn from it, and then can carry on learning about life. And the 12 steps are all about learning. So on the way to step 8, August 8th month, all about step 8 for me. And it reads, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And that's quite a long way down the list of 12 steps, is step 8. So the first 7 which go before it. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become manageable. So if I drink again, life gets unmanageable. Often simply, if I were to drink again, because I want to take it all back, control it, and I can't control drinking. And if I can't control drinking, whatever makes me think I can control anything else. But in there is freedom of choice to be sober so life can work as best it can, without trying to fix it or make it my way. So powerless over alcohol, and life gets unmanageable when I'm drinking. And it's been some years stopped, but it's only one day at a time. Only one day which counts, today. Don't drink, go to meetings and see what happens. Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And that higher power is as you choose. I choose it's learning the truth, learning how to love people, be loved back, useful, and gaining wisdom from others. So truth, love and wisdom. It's my higher power. I may have opinions and beliefs, but truth is always there if I want to find it and utilize it in my life. So it's not all about what I think, it's about what is the world as it is, and what is the world as it is today, and what can I do. So being restored to sanity means I don't keep doing the old thinking over and over again and expecting a different result. So throughout my drinking days it was all about the job, romance, finance, the career, trying to be proving myself and never quite happy with the outcome. So these days the outcome is life on life's terms, the possible rather than the impossible. And then step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And for me, God is truth, love and wisdom. So if I get to the truth, love people, be loved back and gain wisdom from others, I've got a higher power, God in my life. But you know, it's your understanding of God which is important to you. So whether you have an understanding or not, atheist, agnostic or believer, if you can believe that wisdom comes from others very often, experiences will help. Listening to what is out there rather than trying going it alone, as we may have done in the past, makes we are open to every possibility rather than pushed down into what we think we ought and what we think it should be. Thinking that way got me good places and bad places, but in the end I learn wisdom from other people, so I do have an understanding of God in my life. Very rudimentary, but everybody has their own way and a higher power. So I listen to the universe, people, nature, providence, what's going on. Step 4, quite a prolonged one, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and that is really writing a life story, understanding where the anger, resentments of life came up, how we tried to fix ourselves either by controlling or fixing a drink, so that we could push it all away and take the edge off. What I've learned is it doesn't do any good to take the edge off life, because life on life's terms, living in the moment, is spiritual. It's the absolute spiritual experience of reality. And the closer to it I am, the better I feel. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, which is having written everything down in step 4, life story, where everything went right and wrong, where the glaring omissions of truth may have occurred in our own living. Then we share it with another human being, or God as well, as we choose to understand where the higher power is. So sharing what went right and wrong in my life story, I did it with a group of people and also to one other person, and I also did it the way it is suggested in the literature of AA. So it all worked out in the end, and I was able to feel relief that I was no longer alone with the horrible secrets that maybe were stuck inside me and blighting me. Step 5, admitted to God. Yes, just talked about that. Then in step 6, having shared everything, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now for me that's very simple. My primary problems were fear, putting on a brave face, and ego, covering up my shame and guilt about things which had worked out, or horrible things which had gone wrong. So the defects of character, glaringly for me, fear of being found out, putting on a brave face so that you don't see the real me, because you wouldn't like me if you really knew me, and then ego, which was covering up all sorts of shame, guilt about being found out. So step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings, and my shortcomings, lack of faith, lack of courage, lack of confidence in the end. So from extremes of fear, brave facing and ego, becoming right with the right amount of fear about what's going on around me, no need to put a brave face on, let the world in. Then my courage, faith and confidence started to improve. And it's a daily thing. These principles or steps only work for today. We get more able to utilise the principles and they become second nature as we learn. But we need to remind ourselves, most likely, in our morning thoughts and feelings or meditations, that it's good to be powerless over alcohol and life will get manageable if I took a drink. It's good to say, if I go back to the old ways, it would be insanity of doing the same thing over and over again. Let go and let good things happen. Learn from my life story and how I shared it with another human being. And then be aware that fear will overwhelm me if I'm not careful. And I need to have enough courage, faith and confidence on a daily basis. So those are the 7 steps in essence, really, how they work for me. But it's always how it works for you, which is really important. And when we come to step 8, making a list, or made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, it's about making a list from our life story of where it went right and wrong, the harm done to others. And don't forget, self-harm is where we were when we were in our final days of drinking as an addict or an alcoholic. And into recovery we start to unpick what went wrong and what works, what goes right on a daily basis. And real life doesn't mean it's all going to be a garden of roses or just wonderful, in the sense that it's going to be all honey and fantastic. It won't be like that. Life is difficult. That's what M. Scott Peck said in The Road Less Travelled. Life is difficult. But if we actually accept life is difficult, it's a lot easier to get on with it and be a part of, be included, rather than excluded, isolated, and feeling resentful about the world and what it's doing to us. Or why can't we have whatever it is? So step 8 in this book, the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. This is the reading. I sort of include some words from me as I go along, because it helps me understand what I'm saying. So always, it's the many voices in the fellowship and the programme which help us understand the steps and how they work in people's lives and how they understand them. The principles work for everyone, but they work slightly differently because every person is different, which is why I always encourage listen to the many voices and not just my voice, because I am just one single voice with an opinion and belief on how this system or set of principles work in my life. I can't emphasize enough, it's the many voices being face to face with people as we learn to live life again. So, step 8, page 79 of this book. There are many versions of this book, big, small, pocket size. On the AA website you can download it and read it. But anyway, this is me sharing about it. Step 8 and steps 8 and 9 are connected with personal relations. First, we take a look backwards and try to discover where we have been at fault, and that comes out of our life story in step 4. Next, we make a vigorous attempt to repair the damage we have done. And third, having thus cleaned away the debris of the past, we consider how, with our newfound knowledge of ourselves, we may develop the best possible relations with every human being we know. This is a very large order. It is a task which we may perform with increasing skill, but never really finish, because life is never over, and we just live one day at a time. Learning how to live in the greatest peace, partnership and brotherhood with all men and women, of whatever description, is a moving and fascinating adventure. Every AA has found that he can make little headway in his new adventure of living until he first backtracks and really makes an accurate and unsparing survey of the human wreckage he has left in his wake. To a degree, he has already done this when taking moral inventory at step 4. But now the time has come when he ought to redouble his efforts to see how many people he has hurt, and in what ways. This reopening of emotional wounds, some old, some perhaps forgotten, and some still painfully festering, will at first look like a purposeless and pointless piece of surgery. But if a willing start is made, then the great advantages of doing this will so quickly reveal themselves that the pain will be lessened as one obstacle after another melts away. So in other words, we need not avoid anything ever again. These obstacles, however, are very real. The first, and one of the most difficult, has to do with forgiveness. The moment we ponder a twisted or broken relationship with another person, our emotions go on the defensive. To escape looking at the wrongs we have done another, we resentfully focus on what he or she has done us. This is especially true if he has, in fact, behaved badly at all. Triumphantly, we seize upon his misbehaviour as the perfect excuse for minimizing or forgetting our own. So in step 8, it's about keeping and sweeping our side of the street clean. It's not getting out a great big powerful digger and drilling holes in their side of the street. Justifiable anger will not help us. Right here we need to fetch ourselves up sharply. It doesn't make much sense when a real tosspot calls a kettle black. In England, tosspot is it's the vernacular for a very bad word. It's not as bad as the bad words. Anyway, I could be a tosspot, I'll tell you that. Let's remember that alcoholics are not the only ones bedeviled by sick emotions. Moreover, it is usually a fact that our behaviour when drinking has aggravated the defects of others. So as we get aggravated, other people get aggravated, and we ramp up the problem, which can end in riots, as we have found in the UK over the last few days. We've repeatedly strained the patience of our best friends to a snapping point, and have brought out the very worst in those who drink, who didn't think much of us to begin with. In many instances we are really dealing with fellow sufferers, people whose woes we have increased. If we are now about to ask forgiveness for ourselves, why shouldn't we start out by forgiving them, one and all? And of course, when we condemn those who have just the basics in life for not being as good as those who have 248 times more income per annum, 248 times income per annum, more than the average, then it's little wonder that people get aggravated. But the steps are about me and keeping my side of the street clean. It's just that I can see where people go digging with other people. When listing the people we have harmed, most of us hit another solid obstacle. We got a pretty severe shock when we realised that we were preparing to make a face-to-face admission of our wretched conduct to those we had hurt. It had been embarrassing enough when in confidence we had admitted these things to God in step 5, to ourselves and to another human being. But the prospect of actually visiting or even writing the people concerned now overwhelmed us, especially when we remembered in what poor favour we stood with most of them. There were cases too where we had damaged others who were still happily unaware of being hurt. Why, we cried, shouldn't bygones be bygones? Why do we have to think of these people at all? These were some of the ways in which fear conspired with pride to hinder our making a list of all the people we had harmed. So step 6, all about defects, where fear, brave facing, and why should I? Because my part wasn't that as bad as their part in it. So there are big considerations, but the freedom is, if we make the list of those people we have harmed and become willing, then we can work out with the help of other people where and how the amends can be made. Some of us, though, tripped over a very different snag. We clung to the claim that when drinking we never hurt anybody but ourselves. We do hurt ourselves, self-harm to the point of death almost, and recovery is always almost from death, from being nearly dead. I'm saying that emphatically because I spent some time in intensive care because of my drinking and my absolute despair and desolation at life. It doesn't make it right or wrong, but self-harm is self-harm. Yes, we never hurt anybody but ourselves. Our families didn't suffer because we always paid the bills and seldom drank at home. Our business associates didn't suffer because we were usually on the job. Our reputations hadn't suffered because we were certain few knew of our drinking. Those who did would sometimes assure us that, after all, a lively bender was only a good man's fault. What real harm, therefore, had we done? No more. Surely then we could easily mend with a few casual apologies. This attitude, of course, is the end result of purposeful forgetting. It is an attitude which can only be changed by a deep and honest search of our motives and actions. And that's about the life story and what follows. And believe you me, it really, really does help us understand where we came from, why it happened, and self-knowledge helps us deal with real-life situations today. Though in some cases we cannot make restitution at all, and in some cases action ought to be deferred, we should nevertheless make an accurate and really exhaustive survey of our past life as it has affected other people. In many instances we shall find that though the harm done others has not been great, the emotional harm we have done ourselves has, because we weren't true to ourselves. Very deep, sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persist below the level of consciousness. At the time of these occurrences, they may actually have given our emotions violent twists, which have since discoloured our personalities and altered our lives for the worse. In other words, the consequences of our wrongdoing, or harming others, has really harmed us. It's like hurt people hurt people. People who self-harm harm themselves. And we're not able to relate very well with the rest of the world. While the purpose of making restitution to others is paramount, it is equally necessary that we extricate from an examination of our personal relations every bit of information about ourselves and our fundamental difficulties that we can. Since defective relations, and this is just relationships which are just not working, it's called defective because it's not working, and this is the language of the book and of the steps. So it's a language which works, even though we don't like it. We don't like to use the word defects of character, but what it's saying is character traits which were never developed or got twisted by events and life and drinking. Since defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight. We can go far beyond those things which were superficially wrong with us, to see those flaws which were basic, flaws which sometimes were responsible for the whole pattern of our lives. Thoroughness, we have found, will pay, and pay handsomely. And one of the things I've learned, and it was said tonight as well by another person, it sounds selfish to say this, but if we don't do it, we can't relate it to other people as well. It's how to get a sense of self-esteem, courage and confidence to keep on going, to find how we love ourselves enough to be our best friend, and in so doing to be the best friend with people we relate with from here on in. And to mend and it's taken me a while to understand what love is, how to love and be loved back. And this thing of forgiveness, if I don't forgive, love will never be understood. But there are consequences always for our actions. So as we learn to love, see how we have harmed others, and then see how not to harm ourselves or other people, it is a deep, deep insight, and it takes time to settle. And it's okay to not know, always okay not to know. We have then got the humility to keep on learning. And it's all about humility, learning life every single day. We might ask ourselves what we mean when we say that we have harmed other people. What kinds of harm do people do one another anyway? To define the word harm in a practical way, we might call it the result of instincts in collision, which cause physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage to people. And don't forget, harm in a practical way, causing physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual damage, is also about what we've done to ourselves, or what was done to us, so that we ended up trying to fix life with a drink, or a drug, or a substance of any kind, or behaviour of any kind. If our tempers are consistently bad, we arouse anger in others. If we lie or cheat, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind. We really issue them an invitation to become contemptuous and vengeful toward us. If our sex conduct is selfish, we may excite jealousy, misery, and a strong desire to retaliate in kind. Romance and finance always will cause us the biggest challenges because they're part of life, and we don't ignore romance and finance in recovery. After all, we get into recovery so romance and finance can flourish, and we learn as learning life, not being fully prepared for any relationship. How can we? There is no exact, perfect way of living life and finding romance and finance. So we are always learners, and if we think it's always going to be like it was before, not only are we fooling ourselves, maybe we are fooling other people, or other people are fooling themselves too. Anyway, such gross misbehaviour is not by any means a full catalogue of the harms we do. Let us think of some of the subtler ones which can sometimes be quite damaging, as damaging. Suppose that in our family lives we happen to be miserly, irresponsible, callous or cold. Suppose that we are irritable, critical, impatient and humourless. Suppose we lavish attention upon one member of the family and neglect the others. What happens when we try to dominate the whole family, either by a rule of iron or by constant outpouring of minute directions for just how their lives should be lived from hour to hour? What happens when we wallow in depression, self-pity oozing from every pore, and inflict upon those about us such a roster of harms done to others, the kind that make daily living with us as practising alcoholics difficult and unbearable? Could be extended almost indefinitely. When we take such personality traits as these into our shops, offices, and the society of our fellows, they can do damage almost as extensive as that we have caused at home. So we have a lot to work on, and sometimes I'm reminded that maybe I ought to go to Al-Anon, because all those criticisms that were highlighted in that passage sadly applied to my dad, and he never got recovery because we never knew what his problem was, and I walked into the problem of alcoholism with pretty much an ignorant outlook. So I've had to learn a lot, and learn forgiveness, because when people are doing their worst, and it feels like the worst towards us, it may be the best they can be in the moment of now. So I try for forgiveness, that I don't stand and wait for more. The consequences are that I need to move round that particular problem, and if I can't, then I work out with help what to do next. Continuing, Having carefully surveyed this whole area of human relations, and having decided exactly what personality traits in us injured and disturbed others, we can now commence to ransack memory for the people to whom we have given offence. To put a finger on the nearby and most deeply damaged ones shouldn't be hard to do. Then, as year by year we walk back through our lives, as far as memory will reach, we shall be bound to construct a long list of people who have, to some extent or other, been affected. We should, of course, ponder and weigh each instance carefully. We shall want to hold ourselves to the course of admitting the things we have done, meanwhile forgiving the wrongs done us, real or fancied. We should avoid extreme judgments, both of ourselves and of others involved. We must not exaggerate our defects or theirs. A quiet, objective view will be our steadfast aim. Whenever our pencil falters, we can fortify and cheer ourselves by remembering what AA experience in this step has meant to others. It is the beginning of the end of isolation from our fellows and from God. And that's the end of step 8 in the 12 and 12. It's also covered extensively in the AA Big Blue Book, again, which is online now, which is emphatically a good thing in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. It's your opinion about life and your outlook which counts. And with these 12 steps and 12 traditions, I have found how to write a life story which identifies my personality traits which got me into trouble, and the personality traits which made life work. And it's a combination of all of those things. But the list of people harmed, it starts with a few names, and then unfortunately, as we start to remember more and we understand what we've done, it does get a bit longer and longer, and memory comes back about times past. When it says making a list of amends and being willing to do so, in step 9, then, with consultation and careful understanding, and probably a lot of guidance from other people, we learn how to make the amends. And that's most important. There's no point in writing a list of people harmed, ringing them up or contacting them and thinking it's all going to be okay. It's not. But, forgiveness comes. We need to forgive everybody everything, and then we can understand how to forgive ourselves for how it turned out. Even at our best, it was the worst for other people, and we're learning life again. And with humility and being open and letting people in, it's no longer about controlling, manipulating, or putting people under conditions which are not helpful to them. We just need to take a lead for ourselves in how to live life. Live life well, and be equal with people. And we find family, friends, and how it works, because we are no longer trying to run the whole show. The greatest gift, acceptance of life on life terms, it is what it is, and then work out the consequences of actions that are possible and not possible. And when I'm working out what I can do and what I cannot do, I can change my attitude and behaviour. I cannot change the attitudes and behaviours of those around me or impose my will on them. I might feel like it sometimes, but it's not for me to do that. I am blocking the progress of other people if I do that, and in so imprisoning them, I make myself jailer and prisoner of a set of notions which might be quite unhelpful to myself and other people. So there you go. Step 8. The most important part of that is putting it in the context of real life. Real life and common sense always. So the Serenity Prayer, which I share at the end of all my videos, it's an exhortation to God, if that is where you are, a higher power, if that is where you are, an exhortation to the good of good conscience, if that is where you are. It's where you are which counts. What you come to understand works for you. Open, honest, willing to live life to good principles, and then maybe, if it suits you, to be in fellowship, in unity, service and recovery, giving and receiving equally. Nobody knows the answers for another person, and we only learn the answers as we go along. The answers which work today, and they may change another one. So can do, can't do bit with the serenity prayer. To God, or in good conscience, as you come to believe for yourself. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference for me, in the moment, and just for today.